In Genshin Impact, the most important decision that you can make is who to pull for. And because the meta has shifted so much going through Netlin and is poised to shift even more in Nod Krai, I wanted to give you a fully updated pull value tier list. Not to tell you who to pull for, but so you can be the most informed about the account value for each character as you decide on the mix of favorite characters and meta for your account. Welcome to Jello Impact, where we build and test every single character to help you decide who you want to wish for and build. Sometimes when I'm playing, I know that I made a dodge, switch, or input in time, but the game just didn't register it properly. And often, depending on this issue, it is because of my high ping. But fortunately, Gear Up Booster is here and it works. It is free to download and try for yourself. It works with mobile, PC, and console. All you have to do is select your game and press boost. It will reduce your ping. You can see right now I have 91, and then after activating Gear Up Booster, we are all the way down to 65. I even did a switching comparison before and after, and as you can see, I'm just spamming switch back and forth on both of the non-boosted and the boosted side. And as you can see, the boosted side wins by a long shot. It is a very noticeable improvement. Reducing your ping could even be a DPS increase for your account if you're using an artifact set like the Echoes of the Offering, using certain DPSs like Chlorand, or trying to make sure you don't lose Cryo-App when swapping from Citlali to Moika. Gear Up Booster could increase your damage and just make the game more enjoyable to play. It is especially effective if you're playing the game from a different physical location to the server that your game is on. Gear Up Booster is extremely secure, trusted by well-known creators and professional esports teams for games like Overwatch, Fortnite, or League of Legends, and of course enjoyed by millions of Genshin Impact players around the world. Please check out the link below. Again, absolutely free to try out, and let me know how much your ping was reduced by down in the comments. Thanks to Gear Up Booster for sponsoring the channel once again. First of all, a word of warning. I am going to be completely unfiltered about the power level and account value of the characters I talk about in this video. If a character is bad account value, I'm going to say it, but I don't want you to get confused. That does not mean I'm telling you not to pull them. I am not an advocate that you should only pull for meta, and that is not what I'm advocating in this video. But I think that there are still some misconceptions on which characters are strong and worth pulling for, and I really want to make sure as many people as possible are clear about them before we go into Nod Krai. But if you don't want to hear how your favorite character is not good, and you're gonna complain about me saying that they're not good in the comments, you might as well just click away now. That's your warning. Starting off with the Yikes category. The Yikes category have extreme problems even clearing the most basic difficult content in the game. Most of these are DPS. Venti and Sejuani are supports that basically bring nothing to an account and are outclassed by free characters. Tartaglia is basically unusable by the majority of the player base. Cyno is worse than many free and 4-star characters. Eula is terrible. Yoimiya just doesn't do damage. I swear to God, Yoimiya is one of my favorite designs in the game, still top 5 after all these years. But she is really bad, you guys. She's really bad. And Itto is also really bad. Not only is he kind of hard to play, but he's really bad. And he has lots of kit issues. Next is no value, and using them is hard. It's a bit more usable than the characters in the Yikes tier, but using them is difficult. Ganyu, Albedo, Ayato, Wanderer, Xiao, Alhaitham, Miko, Wriothesley. You can use these characters to clear content. I think Wriothesley is the newest character. Maybe if you get some cons on him, people are still doing some pretty cool things with Wriothesley, but Miko is generally outclassed big time by especially off-fielders like Inefa, but even the likes of Fischl, who most people have for free. Ayato obviously bad versus almost every other carry. Xiao and Wanderer do some damage, but it's just not good. Alhaitham, not only has he been outclassed in terms of damage by the newer DPSs, but one of the biggest problems is that Dendro is about to get a revival in the form of Lauma, but Alhaitham is going to totally miss the boat and not get a buff with Lauma. If he gets a buff, it's going to be very marginal, unless things with Lauma change in the next couple weeks. It's looking bad for Alhaitham. Kokomi and Baiju just don't do valuable healing with characters like Escoffier, Bennett and Shalonin running the meta. So yeah, they don't have any value. Using them is hard. This is not a power rankings tier list. This is simply a value tier list. Wriothesley would be a higher value if Ayaka and Skirk didn't exist. But the fact that they do means that he has very, very low value because he's so much worse than they are. Next is the no value, but you can use them category. And I actually struggle to say this because we've got Archons in these categories, you know, Zhongli, Venti, and now Raiden and Nahida. I'm saying that they have no value. What do you mean by that, Jello? Now, if you already have these characters, they have some value. This is not no value if you have them. Like, if you have them, you can't using them. I'm talking about an account that doesn't have these characters, that sees Nahida coming up on a rerun, and they say, oh, people say Nahida's pretty good, I should get her. No, Nahida has 0 pull value right now because she's essentially replaced on all of her teams by Lauma. Nahida does not make Lauma teams better. She actively just is redundant on Lauma teams, except maybe arguably Nilou Bloom. But even then, that is super debatable. And it certainly won't be the case when Nefer comes out, most likely. And Nilou Bloom likely won't be Lauma's best team. So pulling for Nahida is always bad. That's not to say that you can't have a use for her when you have her. Using her for burning stuff in some of the Stygian Onslaught has been good. Using her for the Tulpa has been good. She has some value. So if I were making a power rankings tier list, which I'm working on a brand new version, by the way, Nahida would be significantly higher than this. However, as a pull value for an account to spend an entire 5 stars worth of wishes on Nahida, you're just better off getting Lauma, and then you don't need Nahida. Raiden, same sort of thing. Veresa and Clarand exist, especially Veresa. Flynn's as well. Ayaka, you can use her. She is strong, but she has no value because Skirk is so much better. Again, not saying that you can't use Ayaka, not saying that she's trash. She's actually one of the solid DPSs right now. She just has no pull value because Skirk exists. And you're saying, Jello, you're being a killjoy. I'm not telling you not to get Ayaka. I'm telling you, if you get Ayaka, I want you to know that you're choosing to grief your account by not getting Skirk. And honestly, base. I respect that and I encourage that. I just want you to know. Shenyun, she's basically just right now on all the good teams, she's basically just always worse than Shenyun. You can kind of, and Sucrose and different things, you can kind of get away with her when you get her C2, right? But we're not talking about C2. We're really trying to stick to the most free-to-play friendly stuff, which is C0, C0R1, maybe C1, Shenyun, C2, way too expensive. Chiori, same sort of thing. Most Chiori owners have constellations on Chiori, but if you're just considering getting Chiori, no value. Linny, you know, he's not unusable, but he has no value. Same with Hu Tao. She has some usable teams. All of these characters, they're all usable. Same with Kazuha. Next is Danger. They have some value, okay? Some value, but they are in the danger zone because they're barely holding on by a thread. Shenhe has some value on Skirk teams as the best in slot for a good number of bosses that you might use her on. Not all of them, because often Sitlali has been better against Turtle, Papilla. Sometimes even then Shenhe isn't being used, but in like against the Automaton, and in a bunch of cases, Shenhe has some value, but it's big danger because she's very, very liable to being power crept. Same with Navia. She is currently the best Geo DPS we have, so she has some value for content that requires geo checks, which does exist and could exist more in the future. But I expect that when we get like heavily focused geo content, there's going to be a new geo DPS that takes her out to the farm. So Navia is in danger. Emily is in danger of value because yeah, she's best in slot on Kenichi, and she has some value in other places, but she's kind of outclassed by Kenichi's cons basically. So really don't recommend getting Emily in terms of value. She does have some value though, because although she's outclassed in terms of compared to Kenichi's cons, she is a team slot for him, which allows you to free up your Eonsan for another team, which is very good in the 3-team meta of the Stygian Onslaught, where a lot of people struggle to have enough supports. So she is good in that sense. But you know, even Kenichi I have put in the caution category, which is next. I really wanted to put Flynn's here because I know people are really hyped for Flynn's, and I just wanted you to know that he is good with Anefa, but he's not insane with Anefa, and he is pretty terrible without Anefa. At least that's what it's looking like in the beta right now. So if you're considering getting Flynn's, you do not have Anefa, not telling you not to get Flynn's. I know everyone's excited for him and you can go ahead and get him, and hopefully he gets buffed by Columbina, and you can get Inefa on the rerun, or maybe not, or you get his C1, which is one of the most cracked C1s in the game currently, as long as they don't change it, and then that almost makes up for not getting Inefa. So you can get yourself a Flint, but I just want to throw the big caution flag up there so that you know the potential pitfalls and shortcomings. It's like Skirk without a Scoffier, but even worse because he just does less damage. Chlorand in a pretty good spot. She's not terrible right now. She's just worse than Varesa on Overload teams, and she's worse than Flynn's on Electrocharge teams, and she's the best at Aggravate teams, but Aggravate teams kind of suck. So she has okay pull value. She's not that far from Varesa, but she's strictly outclassed by Varesa, so I don't know. I don't know. I kind of just want to put her, I don't know, maybe it's like, according to the strict rules of my tier list, I almost want to put her here. Because like, what value does she bring? If she's just worse than Flynn's, worse than Varesa, why would you ever pick yourself up a Chlorand when you could just get Varesa? But I do think she is a better DPS than some of the others. I don't know. It's kind of really tough. Tough little situation. Nilou is looking quite good after being buffed by Lauma. My caution is that we don't know where the future goes with Lauma. Nilou's looking like the second strongest Lauma team. Will Nilou work with Nefer? Will you need C1 Lauma to use Nefer with Nilou? Is that even all going to work together? She's good, but also Bloom Calcs are really unreliable. So the caution is kind of just like, let's wait and see how good she ends up being with Lauma, how it compares to other teams, and like, can you realistically advocate putting Nilou when Nefer's probably going to come out and maybe not work with the Nilou version? And then now it's like, why'd you pull Nilou when Nefer is so much better? If we're talking about value, if we ever get AoE back, then Nilou is going to the moon in terms of AoE and value, but right now, not so much. I have Chaska in caution because although I do think she's like a pretty good character, you can check out my video. She does take really contested supports to be strong. So Moika, Yansan, Sitlali is her best team, but that obviously takes extremely contested characters. And then all of her other good teams use Farina, which is a very contested support wanted by Novelette, wanted by Skirk. So I just worry that getting yourself a Chaska might be kind of risky in terms of, depending on if you need those supports for other characters, you might be left with not that much good stuff for your Chaska. You might say, hey, you can just put anything with Chaska. Well, you can, but if you want it to do damage, you kind of need the good stuff. That's just how it goes. And yes, she has a very good weapon and a very good C1 and C2, but then we're talking quite expensive stuff. And even with just her R1, it still doesn't make her cracked enough to use really bad supports. She still needs good supports, and often they are contested supports. So next is okay for now. Okay for now are characters that are currently meta, but might not be in the future depending on where things go. Novelette is becoming more and more of a driver for strong off-fielders. This is obvious by Escoffier and Inefa being his best teams, where he's like less and less the primary damage dealer of his teams. Still okay for now. He's still flexible, still strong, still clearing lots of stuff. But there you go. Yelan is still a good character, still used, still very useful in Stygian Onslaught. It's just kind of like unclear. Who knows? It feels like surely she'll get power corrupt soon, Columbina. But she's okay for now. It's like an okay meta pull for now. And Arlecchino, she works in so many teams. Especially if you're really invested, it kind of gets through a threshold where she's flexible enough that she can brute force things. Kind of similar to Chaska, except I'd say she's even more flexible, and it's just a little bit easier to brute force different things with Arlecchino. So she's still okay for now. I have Lauma here because it's just the calcs are just very unclear as to how strong she's really going to be on release. There's a huge variation depending on whose calculations you're looking at, so we'll have to test her and see. And then we have the final two tiers with the good pull and it depends. So it depends is exactly what it sounds like. These might be a good pull depending on your goals, your needs, your account. And then Moika is just basically a good pull because she's so much stronger than the rest of the cast that basically no matter what else you have, she's a good pull. By the time she next reruns, I hope she's still in a good pull. That's what made me kind of want to put her in it depends. But I think she is basically the meta. She's warped the entire meta around herself. Mav Overload, Mav Melt, Mav Vape with Sing Cho clears the turtles. She has a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of stuff you can do with Mav. She has free-to-play stuff, especially if you ended up getting Yansan copies. So she's the only character going in good pull. And I'm not saying she's the only good pull in the game. It's like, but I can pretty much say any account, if you pull Mav, it's going to be good for you. Like, I can basically say that. I don't think I can say that about the rest of the characters. Like Skirk, second best DPS, but she kind of needs a Escoffier, and she also really wants Farina. So, you know, that's kind of expensive. If she just worked by herself, she'd be a good pull for everyone. But, you know, she needs a Escoffier and Farina, so it depends. Are you willing to get those characters? If you are, that's a great pull. But that's can be expensive if you're coming in brand new. It might be worth it. You might be planning on getting some of those characters anyways. It depends. It might be a good pull, might not. Mualani, very good pull as she is so cheap to build such a great team. 4-star Widsith, add Shalonen, and then Sucrose plus Pyro Traveler, and you've got a top meta team, or at least a very high meta team, that is so cheap to build. So cheap to build. And it's basically like, as long as you can enjoy playing Mualani and you can get around the jank and figure it out, then she's going to be a great pull. If she was easy to play, she would probably go in good pull, to be honest, and then Shalonen probably would too, and because she also works with Moika. But the thing is, so many people don't like playing Mualani that it goes in it depends. And for good reason. I also am annoyed every time I play Mualani. You might be thinking Shalonen should go here, but the reality is there's a bunch of accounts and a bunch of teams that might not really need to go for Shalonen. It might be more impactful to go for other stuff. Sure, she works great with Moika, but you might already have Moika stuff that's very good that doesn't use Shalonen. You might be using other stuff. You might have a Skirk team, then you don't need Shalonen. You might be planning on getting a Flynn's team or a Chaska team, doesn't need Shalonen. A Varesa team doesn't need Shalonen. There's a bunch of teams that don't need Shalonen, so she could be a great pull for you. You know, a Kniech team as another example, but there might be accounts out there that don't need to hear the brain dead advice of just pull for Shalonen, because you might be building teams that don't need her. And in Nod Krai, she might be less valuable as well. Citlali, same sort of thing. If you're playing Melt, you should get her. If you're not, you should not get her. She's actually, you know, I recommended not pulling her for Skirk. I kind of regret saying that because she's very good with Skirk this Stygian Onslaught, and if you have her, it's like very useful to have her on your team. So I kind of think that she's like better with Skirk than I said. So I made a mistake, right? So Citlali is sort of like quite a good pull, but again, not for everyone. And Varesa was an amazing pull. If you got her on her last banner, boy, that was a great pull, because Janson and Chevrus was on that banner. So getting constellations of those 4 stars is so OP, and it makes up a team core that stands on its own. She doesn't take any contested supports. Sure, she wants Mav, but she can use Bennett at a 7% DPS loss. She can use Xiangling at a similar DPS loss, Pyro Traveler at a similar DPS loss. 7% is not crazy. C6, losing C6 Chevrus is only a 10% DPS loss. And sure, this all starts adding up, but the reality is you might have gotten all that stuff just from her banner, and you basically got an entire top 3 meta team just from wishing on one banner, which basically never happens. Why is this? It depends then. Why isn't she just in good pull? Well, she might not be with Janson and Chevrus on the next banner. So I don't want to steer you wrong and say it's all about Varesa, because frankly, if Clorand came with Chevrus and Janson every single time, she would be a lot higher of a value pull as well. So it's like her value was kind of made by that last banner. And if they rerun Chev and Janson with her again, I'll put her in good pull again, because it's just such a cheap way to get a full team. It's kind of like the Mualani thing, except that she's easier to play, where you just pull one character and you're good to go. Moika, you kind of really want either Shalonen or Citlali, ideally Citlali. You know, Mualani kind of really wants Shalonen. Yeah, she can get away without it, but she kind of really wants Shalonen. Skirk really wants a Escoffier, and ideally Farina as well. Varesa just needed the 4 stars that came with her banner. That's all. So, and to be the 3rd strongest team in the game, 2nd strongest at the time, kind of crazy, honestly. So that is my pull value ranking. Again, go for who you want to go for. Have fun, enjoy, get yourself an Edo, and enjoy your Edo, but just do so with the knowledge that this is where I really think the meta is for pull value, and I'm feeling pretty good about this. You can, especially the lower ones, you know, if you want to put, you know, Kokomi down here and yoimiya up here, you can totally do that, and I don't really care, because the reality is none of the bottom 3 really matter. Like none of these have any value. It's basically like here and below, it's like don't wish for them. It's like just don't. Just what are you doing for yourself? I kind of want to put Chlorine here. It's just like don't wish for these characters. And with these characters, it's like you can barely wish for these characters. I don't know. Again, in terms of value and progressing in the end game. And I don't think that should be the be all end all, but I think you should weigh the power with your love of the character. And I can't do that for you because I don't know how much you love each character. If you really love an old character, then you can, do other stuff to make up for it. All I can do is tell you what my subjective opinion on the objective pull value of the character. So let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you hate it. Check out our brand new podcast. I'll link it down below. And if you don't want to do any of those things, that's totally fine. Just watching the video has been more than enough. Thanks so much. Bye for now.